What if darkness itself could walk across the stars? What if one man's rage, sorrow, and power too vast for one universe tore a wound through reality and bled into another world where even gods tremble? In the beginning, there was silence. Not peace, never peace, but the heavy, waiting stillness that exists before something shatters. Across the endless ocean of galaxies, there was one mind burning brighter and colder than all others. A mind forged in fire, hatred, and loss. They called him many names: Lord Vader, the Dark Lord, the hand of the Emperor. But beneath the armor, beneath the breathing, beneath the metal and machine, there was only one truth: he was a wound that refused to close. The Force surrounded him as always, a storm that obeyed and defied him in equal measure. But on that day, aboard his great flagship, the Executor, something changed. The Force began to whisper in ways it never had before. It did not speak of enemies or destiny, it spoke of beyond. Vader stood at the edge of the observation deck, black armor reflecting the dying light of distant stars. His breath came slow and mechanical, the rhythm of a monster born from a man. Behind that mask, his eyes once full of fire now shimmered like twin voids. He felt it, a tear in the fabric of the Force, something older than time, something that should not exist. His command crew felt it too, though they could not name it. Screens flickered. Lights dimmed. The great engines of the Executor groaned as if the ship itself sensed the abyss yawning before it. Lord Vader, the captain's voice trembled. A gravitational anomaly has appeared off our bow. It's not charted on any Imperial records. The air thickened. Even through the cold metal, Vader could feel it, the pull of something vast, malignant, hungry. It was not the Force. It was something that fed on the Force. Reverse course, the captain stammered. Vader's head turned slowly, mechanically. No, the single word rolled through the chamber like thunder. Advance. But, my lord, do not question me. And so, the Executor pressed forward. The stars ahead began to twist, bending like reflections in broken glass. Space itself seemed to scream. Then, without warning, the void erupted. It was not light that consumed them but shadow. The stars went out. The deck plates shook violently as a tidal wave of power ripped through the ship. Men screamed. Machinery howled. The Force howled back. For the first time in years, Vader felt something he did not recognize: disorientation. His senses fractured. The Force around him splintered, distorted, as if it were being rewritten by another hand entirely. Then came the voice. Not the Emperor. Not the Force. Something deeper. Something that fed on belief. Welcome, Broken One. It was not sound, yet it was heard. Not thought, yet it filled the air. Vader's body seized as visions flooded his mind: worlds burning in eternal night, gods of blood and decay laughing in the warp, legions of armor giants kneeling before a corpse god on a golden throne. He saw a galaxy drenched in madness, faith turned into weaponry, technology worshipped like prayer. Here, the voice whispered, your darkness will find home. And then impact. The Executor screamed as it was torn apart by forces beyond any hyperdrive or wormhole. The hull disintegrated, consumed by crimson fire. Vader reached out through the storm, his will holding fragments of the ship together, but even his power faltered. His armor cracked. His vision went white. When the chaos ended, there was nothing but silence. The kind of silence that is not absence, but aftermath. Vader's body lay amidst the wreckage alone in a sea of dying embers. The stars here were wrong. They bled red and gold. The air itself seemed alive, humming with unseen voices. The force still moved through him, but it was different. It twisted. It resisted. It whispered back. He rose slowly, each motion heavy, his breathing the only rhythm in a dead sky. The executor was gone. His crew was dust. There was no communication, no hyperspace relay, no sign of the Empire. Only a void, vast, hungry, and old. He looked up. A single planet loomed ahead, black against the bleeding stars. Something in its gravity beckoned him. He extended his hand and felt the force shudder as if in pain. Not the force, he realized. Something else. Something alive that looked back when he reached out. Vader turned his gaze to the planet and whispered through the modulation of his breath. So, this is where the dark side leads. And from the shadows of the warp, unseen by him, 1,000 eyes opened. The galaxy of the 41st millennium had noticed its new arrival. What happens when the most feared man in one galaxy awakens in another, where even gods go mad? If you stay with me until the end, you'll discover how one act of defiance from Darth Vader reshaped not only his fate but the balance of power in an entire universe that was never meant to know his name. The void was still burning when he opened his eyes. The stars above him were fractured, like shards of a broken mirror reflecting unfamiliar constellations. Around him, the wreckage of the executor drifted silently, torn and twisted by forces beyond comprehension. A graveyard of steel, scattered across the heavens. Vader's breathing echoed slow, steady, mechanical. Each breath a declaration that even death itself could not silence him. The planet below pulled at him like a heartbeat. It was no ordinary world, it pulsed with energy that felt like the Force, but heavier, denser, as if reality itself was suffocating beneath its own gravity. He reached out with his mind. The Force responded, but it came laced with distortion. Every thought sent ripples through the space around him, but instead of clarity, he felt resistance. Something vast was listening. Something ancient was studying him in return. For a moment, even the Dark Lord hesitated. Then he commanded the remnants of his shuttle to obey his will. Metal fragments fused under invisible pressure, reforming into something half dead, half alive. The engines coughed once, then ignited under his command. The machine obeyed, though reluctantly, like a creature resurrected against its will. As he descended through the thick atmosphere, lightning streaked across a sky that bled rust red. The clouds moved unnaturally, coiling like veins of some colossal beast. Below, endless plains of ash stretched into the horizon. Black towers rose in the distance, fortresses carved not by design, but by devotion. The sensors crackled with static. Words appeared across the broken displays, an alien script, unreadable yet strangely reverent. Vader stared at it through his visor. Somehow, without understanding, he knew the words for what they meant: Holy Terra watches. He landed amidst ruin and silence. The soil hissed under his boots, as if scorched by his presence. Around him stood colossal statues, saints, warriors, and angels of metal, all weathered by time yet worshipped as if still alive. Their eyes followed him, or perhaps that was the illusion of faith carved too deeply into stone. Then came the sound: marching. Hundreds of armored figures emerged from the fog, their banners marked with the sigil of a two-headed eagle. They moved with rigid precision, their faith thicker than the smoke that surrounded them. And at their head rode a man draped in robes of crimson and gold, his eyes filled with the fire of fanatical belief. Identify yourself, the man shouted, voice carried through the vox. By decree of the Holy Emperor, none may set foot upon this consecrated world unannounced. Vader stood motionless. Only the faint sound of his breathing answered. I said identify yourself, the voice repeated, shaking now with anger or fear. Slowly, Vader raised a gloved hand. The air grew colder. Dust began to swirl at his feet, drawn into invisible spirals. The soldiers raised their weapons, fingers trembling on triggers, but before they could fire, silence. Every rifle lifted from their hands, torn from reality by unseen force. They hovered for a heartbeat in the air, then turned. The first volley of screams echoed across the plains as their own weapons turned against them. Metal groaned, bones cracked, and the crimson fog grew darker still. The commander fell to his knees, his faith crumbling faster than his breath. Witchcraft, he gasped. Sorcery. Vader approached him, his steps deliberate, unhurried. What god do you serve? The voice that emerged from behind the mask was a distortion of thunder. The Emperor of mankind, the man stammered. He watches all. He protects all. Does he protect you now? The man could not answer. His body trembled beneath the invisible pressure of Vader's will. The metal of his armor began to dent inward, as if the air itself had teeth. You speak of gods, Vader said. But I have killed gods before. With a flick of his wrist, the commander's body collapsed into dust. The remaining soldiers fled into the mist, screaming prayers that went unanswered. Vader turned his gaze skyward. He could feel the weight of unseen minds watching him from above, something divine, something powerful, something curious. And in that moment, both universes held their breath. Because for the first time, the faith-driven world of the Imperium had met a being who served no god, only will. And that single truth would change everything that followed. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to stand so close to darkness that it begins to whisper your name? Stay with me until the end, because you'll see how even Darth Vader, the master of fear, found himself standing before something that terrified even him. The battlefield had gone quiet. The ashes of the fallen hung in the air like ghosts, drifting through the crimson fog. Vader stood amidst the silence, his breath echoing through the emptiness. The force around him rippled, unstable, uneasy, as though this universe itself was trying to reject his presence. He felt it first as a tremor beneath his feet. A vibration not of earth or metal, but of existence itself. The ground split open, and from beneath it, a current of raw energy surged, a river of light and shadow, writhing like a living thing. The air tasted of iron and blood. The force tried to speak, but the voice was drowned by something louder, something older. The warp was calling. He could feel its hunger reaching for him like claws dragging through his mind. Whispers echoed in languages older than stars, promising him glory, dominion, freedom. But woven between them were other voices, voices that knew his name. Anakin. The breath inside the mask hitched. That name, buried, forbidden, erased, broke through the walls he had built. He turned sharply, scanning the horizon, but there was nothing. Only the storm, rising higher. You still mourn her, don't you? Padme's voice. Soft, haunting, impossible. It came from nowhere, yet filled every atom around him. He took a step forward, his hand trembling as it had not done in decades. She waits for you, inside the light, just reach out. The force pulsed violently within him. Every instinct screamed trap, but something else, something human, made him hesitate. He extended his hand into the darkness, the mechanical fingers trembling as they touched the storm. And in that instant, he fell. The warp devoured him whole. Colors exploded into madness, reds, violets, and shadows deeper than black. Time ceased to exist. The laws of nature bent until they broke entirely. Vader found himself floating through a sea of screaming souls, each one clawing, begging, cursing. He felt their pain, the endless torment of minds twisted by chaos. Faces morphed and melted before his eyes, shifting between the innocent and the damned. A soldier begging forgiveness. A mother crying for her child. A Jedi's face dissolving into a demon's grin. And above it all, four vast presences loomed. Titans of emotion. Gods of corruption. He could not see them, but he could feel them. Kern, the blood-soaked rage that shook the universe with every heartbeat. Xianj, the whisperer of schemes, watching him through eyes that saw across all time. Nurgle, the rot that smiled with fatherly affection. And Slaanesh, the voice of every forbidden desire he had ever silenced. They spoke without words, their intentions slithering into his thoughts. "You are one of us," said the voice of war. "You seek order but bring only chaos," hissed the voice of change. "You wear death as your mask," crooned the voice of decay. "You still ache for what you've lost," purred the voice of pleasure. Vader's body trembled under their gaze, the force inside him flaring like a dying sun. The warp pressed against his mind, trying to rewrite him to make him one of its champions. He roared in defiance, his voice echoing through eternity. "I serve no god." Lightning erupted around him, black and red and infinite. The warp screamed back, furious, wounded by his will. The force within him burned hotter, tearing through the corruption that tried to consume him. "I am the dark side itself." And with that, the sea of madness split apart. A column of light, cold and blinding, surged upward, driving back the endless storm. The gods recoiled, and for the first time, the warp feared. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it ended. Vader found himself kneeling on the surface of an unfamiliar world. The storm above him was gone, but its echoes lingered in the corners of his mind. His armor was scarred. His breathing was ragged. Yet his will, his unbroken, unyielding will, remained. He had faced gods. And lived. But deep within the warp, those gods had not forgotten him. Four sets of eyes still watched, burning with rage and curiosity. For in all eternity, no mortal had entered their realm and left unclaimed. They would not rest until he was theirs. Have you ever met someone who looked at you not as a person, but as a prophecy? Stay till the end, because what you'll witness here isn't just the meeting of two worlds, it's the collision of faith and fury, where every breath becomes a question of destiny. Days had passed since Vader had taken control of the Forge world. Under his command, production lines had become precise, efficient, obedient. Entire armies of machines worked in perfect synchrony, and the tech priests, now his disciples, obeyed without hesitation. They called him the living circuit, the Lord of the Machine, the Omni-Sire returned. But beyond their iron skies, word had spread. The Inquisition had heard. And they did not come to worship. They came to judge. When their ship appeared in orbit, a black cathedral drifting through the void, it was like a second sun had risen, cold and merciless. The Vox channels screamed with warnings. Even the tech priests fell to their knees, trembling not in reverence, but in fear. Inquisitor Marcellus descended with his retinue cloaked in purity seals, wielding relics that glowed with holy fire. Every step echoed with centuries of doctrine and doubt. His voice was steel wrapped in prayer. "By the authority of the God Emperor," he declared, "I demand the presence of the entity calling itself the Omni-Sire incarnate." When Vader appeared, silence crushed the air. Marcellus's eyes flickered behind his rebreather mask. "You wear the skin of man," he said, "but your presence, it bends reality. What are you?" Vader did not answer. The only sound was his mechanical breathing, slow, measured, almost mocking. "You stand before the Inquisition," Marcellus continued, his tone tightening. "We purge the unholy. We cleanse the machine of corruption. And you, creature, reek of it." The tech priests around them shifted uneasily. Some whispered in prayer, others in warning. The Muggos tried to speak, but Vader's hand rose slightly, a silent command for stillness. "The Force," Vader said at last, his voice a deep growl beneath the mask, "is not corruption. It is power. And power obeys only strength." Marcellus's expression hardened. "Power without faith is damnation." Vader stepped closer, his presence pressing down like a storm. "Faith without understanding," he replied, "is slavery." The Inquisitor drew his blade, its edge humming with sanctified energy. "Then let us see," he whispered, "whose truth survives." The world seemed to hold its breath. When their powers met faith and the Force, the air tore open. The Inquisitor's psychic wards flared, clashing with Vader's unseen grip. The ground cracked beneath them, machines screamed in resonance, and the tech priests fled as the Temple of Iron became an arena of gods. Marcellus struck with holy fury, his sword burning like the Emperor's own judgment. But Vader caught it mid-swing with nothing but his will. Metal shrieked as invisible power bent the blessed blade. "You call this holy?" Vader's voice thundered through the hall. "This is fear wrapped in gold." He turned his palm, and the Inquisitor was hurled backward, slamming into the iron wall. Sparks burst like dying stars. Marcellus rose again, blood streaking his mask. "If you are a god," he gasped, "then face the fire of faith." He unleashed his power, a storm of psychic energy, pure belief turned weapon. But Vader stepped through it, unbroken, his red blade igniting with a hiss that silenced all doubt. The crimson glow reflected in the Inquisitor's eyes not just as light, but as revelation. Because in that moment, he realized the truth: this was not a demon of chaos. This was something else. Something the Emperor himself might have feared. The Inquisitor fell to his knees, whispering not to Vader, but to the heavens above him. "If this is the Omnissiah, then the machine god walks among us." Vader stood above him, breathing steady, unwavering. "I am no god," he said once more. "But I will remake yours." As the fires dimmed and the forge fell silent, a new empire was being born, not of faith, not of purity, but of control. And for the first time in the grim darkness of that galaxy, even the Inquisition bowed its head. Stay till the end, because what unfolds next isn't just the meeting of two titans, it's the moment destiny itself trembles. The reward for staying with me is this: by the time we reach the end, you'll understand why even gods fear the silence that follows their own awakening. Across the endless void, beyond the cracked worlds and burning stars, there lies Terra, the cradle of humanity, and the tomb of its god. For 10,000 years, the Emperor of mankind has sat upon the golden throne, neither dead nor alive, feeding upon the souls of 1,000 psychers each day just to remain conscious. The Imperium prays, the Ecclesiarchy chants, and the Inquisition enforces his will, all while the husk of their divine ruler watches in eternal stillness. But now, something has changed. In the quiet of that sanctum, amid the endless hum of machinery and whispered litanies, a ripple disturbed the warp. It was subtle at first, a disturbance no mere mortal could feel, but the custodians, those golden giants guarding their emperor, felt it in their bones. A tremor of presence, alien yet familiar. One of them turned to his brother and said in a voice that carried both awe and dread, "He stirs." In the psychic sea of the warp, the Emperor's consciousness, vast, broken, Ancient felt the echo of a presence he did not expect. It was cold, controlled, and relentless. A will forged not in divine purpose but in pain. It was the dark hum of machinery bound to flesh, the pulse of a man who had once been human and yet transcended it. Vader. For a long moment, there was only silence across the Imperium. Then, like a whisper crawling through eternity, the Emperor spoke not aloud, but into the soul of the galaxy itself. Who dares? Across the void, within the Forge world under Vader's control, every machine stilled. The air thickened. The Force trembled as if a great eye had turned upon it. Vader felt it not as a voice, but as an overwhelming presence, immense and endless, burning with both light and decay. He knew it instantly. This was not the Force. This was something beyond it, something vast enough to challenge even the dark side. The Emperor's thought pierced through him. You wear the armor of man, it said, but the shadow of God's clings to you. You are not mine, and yet you are shaped by my image. Vader stood in silence, every circuit in his armor vibrating under invisible strain. I seek not to be yours, he replied coldly. I am here to bring order. Your galaxy knows only chaos. A pause. And then, for the first time in 10 millennia, the Emperor laughed. It was a sound like the breaking of worlds, both terrifying and profound. Order. His voice echoed through Vader's mind. You seek to tame what even gods could not. The Imperium is not a machine, Dark One. It is faith. It is madness. It is survival. Then it is broken, Vader said, his tone unflinching. And I will fix what you no longer can. The psychic storm that followed tore through reality. Warp storms flared across distant systems, planets blinked out of existence, and ships vanished into the madness of the void. The Emperor's fury burned like a sun reborn. You presume to rule my creation, the Emperor thundered. You presume to bring light with darkness. And yet, through that blinding power, Vader did not falter. I do not bring light, he said. I bring control. For a heartbeat, the universe seemed to stop as if both divinity and shadow were waiting to see which truth would dominate. Then, slowly, the Emperor's power withdrew. Very well, came the final whisper. Show me, Lord of Machines. Show me what control costs. The link severed. Silence returned. And when Vader opened his eyes, the stars above the Forge world had dimmed. Not gone, dimmed. As if the galaxy itself now held its breath, waiting for what came next. Deep within the warp, the Emperor of mankind, that God chained to his own throne, remained awake. His golden eyes flickered open for the first time in 10,000 years. And far away, aboard his dreadnought throne, Darth Vader whispered, almost to himself.